record on this computer. Okay, we're ready to go. So Jan, first of all, I'm just so thrilled to be doing this with you because as we mentioned last week, we have been like having this vision for like most of the time we've known each other, right? In various forms. So yeah.
Renee, I remember you helping me paint my studio and us talking about our dreams.
Yeah.
And this was, I think that's where this actually began, the roots of it, right?
It's so funny because I have a literal memory, which of course, you know, being the geek that I am, I know this is how the brain works, but I have a literal memory of where I was as something really important happened in that conversation, like where you were relative to me in the room. And so it definitely is lit up in my memory as an important moment, even though I don't remember all the details of it. Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Great to be here.
Yeah, yes. So so we were asked last week, why is this a group for women? Why not men? And why is it important for women to gather? Which I thought was a great question. First of all, because I never thought when I was younger, I never thought it was important for there to be separate spaces. And I also was very much in denial of my own female energy at that point. I was very like masculine dominated in terms of how I approached the world. I was in an engineering career. Most of my friends were guys. Like, so I know that I came from actually the other extreme, and I eventually grew into embracing that aspect of myself. And that was when my personal growth and my spirituality took off. And I know you have a different story in terms of embracing your own feminine.
Well, it's so interesting that you say that because I grew up with two brothers and about 6 male cousins, no girls. In fact, I was getting ready to leave for college before I had a female cousin even that lived near. And, you know, my closest friends were guys.
Yeah.
So I find that so interesting. I didn't realize we had that similarity. That we, and I still enjoy guy friends, but at some point, and I can remember specifically when we first moved to St. Louis, and I met a lady at church. She was 10 years older than me, but we got into discussions like I had never found anyone I could discuss those subjects with, and specifically spirituality and spiritual growth and all of the books that kind of jumped out at us and we would read, but I really didn't discuss those books with anyone. She was the first person that had read those same books, and we got so excited, you know, talking.
Yeah.
So I was actually married and had 3 children by the time I really felt that first really soul sister connection, if you want to call it. Mm. So I've realized the importance of that ever since. And being married and going through a divorce, then being in relationships and out, I was very much hit with it's those close female friends that are always there. Yeah. They're going to always be there.
Yeah.
So probably the core of my desire to inspire and help women.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have some parallel there. And there's definitely a strong genetic thing around men in your family, that's for sure. You have 3 sons, I have 2, like all the cousins are guys except for one.
We have great discussions, by the way, which I know is really rare, that you can sit around with your children and your daughters-in-laws and have deep discussions. So I love that. Yeah,
for sure. So I know you had shared with me that you found some data and stuff, like some facts around women and how we have been emerging in recent years. So I was wondering if you wanted to share a little bit of that, and we'll
A
start.
little background history. Is that what you?
Yeah, some of the stuff that you shared with me earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the world is made up of about half women.
Mhm.
And yet, throughout history, women have been, for most of that time, possessions, not on an equal basis, submissive. Uh, that's in every patriarchal culture, and there have been very few matriarchal cultures throughout history. And it's even interesting that historically, you have less war and less violence in matriarchal cultures, as rare as they are in history. But in this country, in our culture, we celebrated the 100th year of being able to vote last year, right? Or is that this year?
Yeah, it was
Oh,
recent.
it's been
Yeah,
100
it's been a year that feels like 50 years, right? So who knows?
in this year. But and in the 60s, you couldn't, as a woman, get your own credit card until late 60s. So think about what a short time ago that was.
Yeah.
So women have been unable to express their full potential culturally, historically, in most cultures throughout the world. And so it really pains me to see that in our culture, we tend to have even been pushed back a little bit in the last few years in terms of what we as women can accomplish. Now, for the most part, though, it's changed a lot, even especially between my mom's generation and your generation, Renee. It's changed dramatically. I was in that kind of in between, where there was a lot of transitioning taking place and a lot of women in my generation developing careers and so forth. But even then, when my children were small, most women still stayed home with their children. So it's really pretty recent that we've even had the opportunity as women to fulfill our potential, even though we have an immense storehouse of potential to express gifts.
Yeah.
We are equally intelligent.
Yeah.
We know all of these things now. And
Yeah.
besides that, we are by nature and probably part of our culture, caregivers and less violent in nature, less ego driven than men in general. And that's a very general statement because not all men are ego driven and violent by all means,
Clearly.
but much less so. So there's a great potential for women, and yet throughout the world, many women still don't have the educational opportunities, the employment or career opportunities, or the self-confidence to express that. So I see it as a real need to help women rise to the top
Right.
and
Yeah.
find themselves, find their unique, authentic self and express that in the world. That's important for every gender, right? It's important for all of us. But because women are kind of getting a later start, I just feel drawn
Right.
to work with women because they also respond powerfully to this kind of support.
You know, as you're talking about that, it makes me think about the idea. I saw this a few years ago where someone said, "My children, and you know anyone my age or younger, our children have never known a time when a Black man could not be president." And I remember how like that was like a whoa, because I'm like, oh, imagine this, because there's never going to be a question in their mind. And I feel like this, what you're expressing right now, is kind of similar, because you know, whenever I start looking at the history of things and I start seeing, wow, it was just as I was born that a woman could get her own credit, or things like that. So my world perspective is, of course, women should be able to, but then when I look at the bigger picture, it's like, wow, that's really recent. And so while my perspective allows for a bigger and more possibilities, my perspective allows that. The bigger perspective
The
has to
rea-
be taken if we're going to recognize that this is just still a baby that's toddling, and we need to have unique spaces then for women to continue to like nurture that community gatherer role, to start to have the kind of conversations that allow us to embrace our uniqueness while also owning our equality. We can be different but equal, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that those unique spaces are important to that, especially if we're the type of women that are world changers, where we see something better for the world. We have to be able to support this toddler within us while still creating the next generation of possibility, right?
In addressing the question, why do we choose to focus on women? Um, I can see down the road with this group that we might add in a group of mixed of men and women to have those important conversations around how we think differently, how we are equal but different, and how we can best inspire and support one another as well. But I know you and I both are kind of on that same page. This is where we feel led to
Mhm.
start. Helping women empower themselves and find their independence and find their unique gift that they have to offer the world in terms of how to make things better, how to make the world a place.
Yeah, and I totally see women, as creators first and foremost. And like while this is like creative, like your beautiful paintings or writings or thing, like, but I also see it as creators of ideas, creators of human beings. Like we're creators of life. It's like so innate to our being
Yeah,
to create and to nurture and to like have a vision. For example, again going with the motherhood thing, for we have this vision of this human being that we're nurturing into to adulthood, and so we nurture ideas in with a similar kind of energy in communities. And so I love you mentioned earlier, when we were talking before this about the Dalai Lama quote about the Western woman is going to change the world. I know that's a paraphrase there, but I really do think that with the unique platform that we have in the Western world of having this budding sense of equality, I would say. I don't think we're there yet, but this budding sense of equality, that we really do have a unique
we,
role.
right. We do have a voice now, and if you look on the internet, you're going to see group after group of women supporting women in various ways and working together to make changes for in the world. I love that idea that we are really creators, and we also like that sense of co-creating,
Yeah.
and nurturing, creating an idea and nurturing and building and sharing. I feel women are really good team builders.
Absolutely.
Uh, I don't think we have as much ego involved in general. There are always exceptions, to
Sure.
everything, but in general, I
Right.
think we don't get so caught up in the ego aspect, so we can be more team builders and working side by side
Yeah.
with.
And weaving the communities, because we do have an ability to um, pull a lot of different things together, I think, a lot of times. And so pulling community together is an example of that. So
You know, that's why it's so important too, that those of you who have joined this community, it's so important that we can hear from you, that we can hear your ideas and your concepts for how to make the world a better place and for how we can support one another, what kind of things we can do to help you in your particular work of world changing, whether it's creating that family and trying to nurture and build relationships within the family or in the community, or even on a wider range. So your feedback is something we really want to get, because Renee and I have a lot of ideas, but what really helps us is to add your ideas in with ours, right? To create the kind of things that can be the most powerful.
To co-create, right? Absolutely.
But this group is
Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing that I was thinking about with all of this is I do too think that the conversation changes whenever we're in mixed company on several levels. And you know, I've witnessed this as a female who's worked in largely male spaces. I've witnessed this in several ways over time. And I think you've mentioned seeing it in your art classes that you teach as well sometimes. But you know, I have these experiences. First, one of my earliest ones was when I was working as an engineer. There was this huge issue at the place where I worked. It was a threat to, you know, quality and customer satisfaction, and it was costing us a ton of money. So it was like all hands on deck. So like all the leadership of the organization was meeting in the same room for weeks on end. It was pretty intense. And I remember this moment, you know, and I'm an observer of people by nature. I kind of like kick back and watch the dynamic. And I remember a woman in the room who came up with a brilliant idea and connection that seemed like just absolutely the right next step for consideration. And I remember people acting kind of like they almost hand waved past it. And we went on and kept talking for about an hour. We were in this meeting all day. And all of a sudden there was a guy in the room who said the exact same thing. And all of a sudden the entire room was like, oh my gosh, that's brilliant. And like all this energy gathered and everyone was ready to charge forward on this idea. And being like the quiet little thing that I was then, I was just sitting there going, she just said that an hour ago, but you know, like I didn't have a voice to like express or support her on any of this. But what I feel like this, one of the things this illustrates is the idea that you know, because we are fresh at the table and because we're not always surrounded by the right ears or supports to move what our ideas forward, you know, like if everyone had heard her in that moment, and if she had been supported by someone like me in that moment, like we would have been an hour further down the line. You know, like, and imagine that on a big world scale, like on a world changing scale, like how much have we lost by not having women feeling equal and supported within the right communities, while we're still, because we're still not at a point where we're heard the same way. I've been in meetings recently, you know, like, you know, this is 25, 30 years down the road. I can't remember. I'm not going to do my math right now. Somewhere around there, about 25, I think. But even in recent years, I remember just sitting in rooms of mixed company, and it could be all women, and then a couple men are in the room, and they take a natural leadership position, and the women would step back the moment that happened. And so this isn't, again, to diss on men or the fact that we need that energy, but it's to say we can have a different conversation, and we can nurture it differently whenever the dynamics of our culture are not active in every space that we're in.
Exactly. That's such a good example, Renee, of men are assumed leaders to be listened to,
Mhm.
and women are not. And I mean, we see that even in our politics. You just notice any woman who rises to the top politically, she is going to have some of the most harsh, cruel judgments. She'll be called all kinds of terrible things because she's assertive, she's powerful, so she's threatening in our society. It's still the case. Um, Now, in my classes, it was a little bit different, which fits in my classes. What became apparent is how free women are to talk about all subjects in a group of women. In my classes, they can become like group therapy, where everyone brings everything they're dealing with and feeling. It becomes quite a support group, which is really fun. But if you bring a male student into that class, it all changes. And the women even talk about this and laugh about it because they don't feel as free, even to make the same jokes, to share the same deeper inner feelings. So that is another reason I think it's important to be a women's group at this point, is so that you really have that safe space to talk about everything,
Yeah,
whatever.
absolutely.
And I'm sure that's true for men too, that men would not be as free to say certain things with a group of women as they would a group of men to deal with some of their issues in the same.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 So, and yeah, I don't know if I have anything to add to that, but I think that,
About is look across the world now, and we look at some of the women leaders, like in New Zealand, and the way what is her name?
yeah, I don't remember, but I just Jacinda or something like that.
But the way she handled the coronavirus
Mm-hmm.
was very different, very lacking ego, with a lot of compassion and nurturing. Uh, and as a result, they've had a lot less problem with the spread of the virus there. So um, women are indeed relationship builders, nurturers, caregivers, peacemakers, really, more so, because we have, through our genes, learned to do that within the family.
Mhm.
And I think we need to start to look at the world more as a family. It's this, if we can bring the world together more and build upon our sameness rather than our differences. Um, Diversity is a beautiful thing when it's embraced and loved, because in our family, we're a very diverse group, right, Renee? And yet that's what gives our family spice and fun and lots of laughs and sometimes chaos, but a lot of love too. And I think we, as women, we understand more how to bring that same sense into the world.
That sounds like a perfect place to end, Jan.
Yeah.
Feels
So
really complete to me.
what you feel and what you think and how you respond differently in a group of just women or a mixed group, and what you feel this group of women can best do to help you change your part of the world.
Yeah.
Right?
I love it. Yes. So yeah, if you can comment below and just let us know, what resonates with you, what you're picturing. That's great. And we are really looking to you all to understand how we can support you best. We do have a couple of things that we have in the works right now, and you'll see those coming out in the coming days. We're talking about just getting some conversation going in here, right? So, so we talked about possibly a roundtable called World Changing Topics. And you can talk a little bit about that, Jan, and then I'll talk about the other group.
Okay, we're taking this idea from a group that I have that meets in person. Well, at least before COVID, we met in person, more Zoom, that is called Spirit Walkers. And it's a discussion group. So for our group, we want to call that World Changing Topics. But we throw out topics, which we're going to hope to get some topics from you too. We'll choose a topic and we'll set a time to gather together on Zoom and have discussions on that topic. So typically what we'll do is we'll choose a topic and then we'll send you some questions around the topic for you to think about, research, whatever, however much you want to put into it. And then come together and we'll all share our ideas and thoughts and opinions on that topic. It'll give us a chance to get to know one another better, and it will also help us to better know how to support one another.
Yeah. And, you know, as you're saying that, it just dawned on me how well aligned that is with what everyone expresses as their strengths and values in the group. This is learning, this is open-mindedness, this is the communication of ideas. So I'm really excited about that. And I've actually participated in Jan's group once, and it was so much fun that I'm actually thinking about creating one locally as well. But I'm, you know, I think this group is as good as any for that, for sure. Also along those lines, I've already got a group called Important Conversations that's happening once a month. We're gathering on first Mondays, and this is actually a book club, or in the month of December, we're going to be watching documentaries. At this point, we're exploring the impact of racism, because as community gatherers, I think understanding all of our community and the impact that our historical perspective and the systems that exist, understanding all of that's going to make us more effective as gatherers of people.
This is a great group, and they could join that too if they wanted to, right?
They can, yep. And so you will see those events starting to show up in this group so that you know how to sign up for them and how to log in. And then a third thing that we're doing, and all of these are free conversations. The other one that we're going to be looking at is going to be called Community Weavers, and it's just going to be around what are our communities, who are we supporting, so we can kind of get to meet and network with each other, but also discuss how do we further develop our own communities, because we're all seeds, and then we can support each other in making those communities thrive. So, all right, anything else before we go?
I'm just anxious to hear back from some of them and get their 2 cents worth.
Yes, yes. Thank you all for all the participating you've been doing so far, and the polls and such. And like Jan said, we're looking forward to your feedback on this and other things that'll support you. All right, it's good talking to you, Jan.
You too.
Love you, lady.
Love you. Bye.